Welcome viewers to this tutorial on how to bulk load data into a SQL Server database, a large amount of data from a data file. So we're going to start by taking a look at what we're trying to accomplish here. So we have a CSV file in this case, a text-based data file with a large amount of records, 100,000 plus records. Something just site out there called fakenamegenerator.com will allow you to generate a large set of data. So generated data with some made-up names and address information and emails that we can use. And we're going to bulk load this data into our SQL Server database. Now, the traditional method would be to just read this data with a stream reader or a file reader, an IO reader, and parse out by commas and look for the quotes and fill out the delimiters and build that up into an insert statement and insert a line at a time into your SQL Server database, or set up a transaction and do some methods to get that into a data table and then pass it off to a bulk copy. So what we're going to do is use two NuGet packages that are out there that are very well respected and used. If we go out there, the first one we're going to use is a package called LinqtoCSV. Okay. What that package will allow us to do is to read our CSV file. It works with any kind of a text-based file. As you can see from the description, it talks about to read from a CSV, tab delimited files. It actually works with any type of a delimited text file. Fixed width, I've not seen it work with. It's looking for delimiters. So any type of a delimited file. And if you have characters that are qualifying your text, so normally in a CSV file, you would have a quote type delimiter, so that if the field itself had a comma in it, quotes surrounding it would be your quote qualifier, and any parser you would use would be based on the comma that's outside of your quotes. The LinqtoCSV class, again, will handle all of that for you. Okay, the next package we're going to use is called FastMember. Okay, notice it's got 1.3 million downloads, so it's fairly well used. And what this tool will do is convert a list of T, an IEnumerable, a collection of objects, any type of object, into a data table. So if you have a need to convert any type of collection into a data table to use in some other type of a process, FastMember will do that for you, and it handles large amounts of data. So the SqlBulkCopy tool takes a data table to load data. So that's why we'll use FastMember to convert so that we can use that. Okay. So with our packages added, we're going to go take a look at the database. So there's already a database that I've created, a database table called people. Okay. And if we look at that table, we'll notice all of our fields that are there, which line up with our fields inside of our CSV file. Okay, so they're the exact same name, exact same syntax, spellings, everything is exactly the same about those fields. Okay, so now we also have a person class which has those same fields as well. So we're going to push that CSV data into a person. So each row will become a person. So we're going to create a list of person. Okay, so let's start out by pasting some code in. And then I'll go through what that code is so you're not watching me type. Okay. So the CSV context is coming out of that LinqtoCSV class. We've got a squiggly line because we're missing the using statement for that. Okay, and over here I've also missed that. Okay, so we're missing the using statement. So to bring it in, we'll do control dot, and we could easily just hit enter in it because it's already on the using statement for LinqtoCSV. So we'll hit that, and it's going to bring that in. Okay, we have a variable that's holding our file name, and we're setting up a context, which is part of the LinqtoCSV namespace, and we're setting up some options, a description of our CSV file, so that the LinqtoCSV class knows how to handle it. Okay, so we're telling it the separator character. So again, as mentioned, this can be done with any type of a delimited file. So if I had a pipe, I'd change that to a pipe. If I had a tab, I'd change it to a tab. And the tab would be how you would escape the tab normally in C#. Okay. So the first line has column names is true because in my scenario, I do have that. And it's a lot easier if your data does have a header, because if it does not, how does this LinqtoCSV class know to serialize to that? Well, it does have ways to do it. So if mine did not have a header, I would tell it did not have a header. And now I need to tell it to enforce a CSV column attribute. Okay. What that means is in my person class, I need to use this I need to decorate my properties with this CSV column attribute. Okay, and again, I need to bring in the LinqtoCSV namespace to do that. Oops. So do the control dot again, bring it in. Okay, so when we do that and we don't have our header, we need to even spell out what field it belongs to. So our delimited file has the gender as the first field. So our field index, which is 0 based, would use 0. Okay, and for the name set, we'd have to do 1. So this only applies if we don't have a column header. Right? So it's probably a lot easier if you have your file. Again, if you're receiving the file on a daily basis from some type of an automated feed and you don't have the header, then you're going to have to map this out. But if you're doing some type of a one-time load or even outside of doing a one-time load, even if you're receiving the file one at a time, if you didn't want to decorate these, you could populate the header yourself prior to feeding it off to the LinqtoCSV. But this is just a demonstration to show that even without a header, there are ways to work with the LinqtoCSV class. But because mine does have a header, and my header, you would also need that if your header did not match your field names. So my field names here match exactly with the header field names. So if those did not match, I could still use my first line has columns equal to true, but now I would actually need to map out. So let's say my header had the gender field as sex. Okay, so my class has the field called as gender. Now I could just change that to sex, and then I wouldn't have to use this. But if you have a backend database that's already there and you're going to populate, you may have to do something different. So you can, again, just to show that you can map out, even if your header has different names for the fields than your class, you can map that out as well. And you would use the name property of the CSV column attribute. Okay. But for my purposes, it's very straightforward. The first line does have column names, and those column names match exactly up with my class. Okay, we're going to set up a stopwatch here just so we can show how long it actually takes to load those 100,000 records. Okay, right here is the line that is where the LinqtoCSV class is serializing the CSV file into my list of person. So the people is a list of person, which is generated from the LinqtoCSV class. Okay, so this single line is taking care of reading the entire CSV file and creating a collection of the contents of that CSV file. And I've used this method with millions of records. So it is very capable of handling a large amount of data. Okay, so I'm going to paste in some more code. Okay, so we're setting up the bulk copy, the SQL bulk copy right now. So I'm going to use using and pull in the SQL bulk copy. It's using a connection string that I have stored as part of my property, as part of my project. And so the squiggliest object reader is part of the FastMember class. Okay, and so I need to tell it to use the FastMember. So I'm going to add the using statement for it, again with the control dot. So we've got, it's reading in our people, and it's creating this method right here is creating the data table for us on the fly. Okay, so where normally you would have taken your text file and you would have created a data table, then you would have looped through the lines in your text file and added them to the data table and set up the fields for your data table and the types and all of that kind of stuff. One line, we're done. It's converted. One line to read in our CSV file and one line to read into a data table. Okay, and now we're using the batch size. That's a SqlBulkCopy thing that you're going to want to use. You want to push a certain number of records to the database at one time. So if you had millions of records, it's not recommended to push them all at one time. You could cause the SQL Server itself to run out of memory. So you want to limit the batch size that you're flushing to the database. So I found a good size as 10,000. If you have a very powerful SQL Server, you can do some testing and see what your memory limitations are, and you can go above that. But that's typically a pretty good size. I've pushed somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 45 million records to a database table in under a minute 30. Okay, so it's very fast. Okay, and we're setting our destination table to people, which I showed was in the database, and we're doing our mappings. I didn't really need to do this because the fields in my database match exactly with the fields in my class. But I found through practice and experience that not using these mappings can cause issues. The SqlBulkCopy class itself does have some little quirks to it. It could error out, and the error that it provides is typically not user-friendly. I've seen errors of the effect of string cannot be converted to a date time. String cannot be converted to an int. That error really has nothing to do with the data. That error would lead me to believe there's a problem with my data, such that I have a field that is a string and I'm trying to send it into a date time field. I've seen that error pop up when you're going string to string. And it could be nothing more than my database has a column called nmSet, and my class has a column called nameSet. And I'm not using this mapping, so the mapping doesn't match up. So the error should have been you have some invalid column mappings, but that's not the type of error I see. Sometimes that occurs, but again, I've seen strange errors by not doing mapping, so I've just got in the practice of mapping. Recommended. You may find through your trials that it doesn't occur for you. So with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and run this. And so we can see the time. How long does it take to actually load those 100,000 records to the database? Okay, oh, didn't set a breakpoint. So you can see it already finished. But I didn't set a breakpoint, so we're going to load that same data again. Doesn't matter. Okay, it's already done. All right, so 2796 milliseconds. So you can see how fast it took to load that amount of data. It's very fast, right? So with that being said, that's it for this tutorial. I hope this helps you with your future endeavors, and we'll see you on the next one.